It's Wednesday afternoon, September 10th, 2025. I'm in my office slash studio. I was recording video content this afternoon. I had my phone turned off. My computer was closed. Not too long ago, I finished that work and turned everything back on. And what I saw was a flood of news regarding Charlie Kirk. At this moment, as I'm recording, it has the news is out there that it's confirmed that he has died. By all appearances, this was an assassination. I don't know who committed this crime, this deeply immoral act. But I also have to say, when I read the news, I was not surprised. I was not shocked. In fact, my response to this is something on the other end of the spectrum. And I'll tell you why. It's because I'm a student of human nature. I'm a student of history. And there are important lessons there for those who are willing to learn, that help us understand moments like this. It turns out human beings always live in some kind of regime, some kind of political regime of some form, some shape. Aristotle did a good job of providing a list, categories of all these different kinds of regimes. And in every human regime, there is a political correctness. There is an orthodoxy. If you go back to the ancient Greek cities, it was piety toward the Greek gods, the pagan gods. And when someone comes along like Socrates, asking a lot of questions, it certainly seemed impious the way that Socrates was talking. And for challenging the orthodoxy, the political correctness of his day, he was charged with crimes, convicted, and executed. He was put to death. That's the risk of going against the orthodoxy. In the medieval world, medieval Christendom, Christianity, in many instances, a kind of cruel form of Christianity, had become the orthodoxy. And if you openly challenge that, question that, you were going to face certain consequences. Maybe they were social at a minimum. You might be ostracized or people shunning you, and possibly more. You might be charged with certain crimes and prosecuted and punished, in some cases terribly. From the time of the American Revolution, certainly through the period of the Civil War, there was a kind of orthodoxy in the United States that it wouldn't be incorrect to say it was a kind of patriotic, pro-American founding orthodoxy. That is something that was held up. If you challenge that, if you question that, you were likely to be met with some raised eyebrows, maybe worse. I'm reminded in as late as 1858, that's when Lincoln and Douglas had their famous series of debates. And both of them, Douglas a lifelong Democrat, Lincoln a member of a new upstart third party, they were called the Republican Party, the sole purpose of which was to stop the spread of slavery. Both of these candidates presented themselves as conservative in the sense that each presented himself, both Douglas and Lincoln, as conserving, preserving the most important ideas and principles of the American founding. Both presented themselves as respectful toward Washington and Jefferson and Madison and Hamilton and that cast of characters from the founding. They certainly did not mock or ridicule them. They did not push back. They did not say they were going down a different path. They said, vote for me because I really am the true heir, the upholder of what the founder started. I'm going to carry that on. That's what Stephen Douglas said, and that's what Abraham Lincoln said. And what that demonstrates is The founding was still an important part of orthodoxy, cultural orthodoxy, political orthodoxy in the United States. That all changed, certainly for decades now. The orthodoxy in the United States is progressivism. Some people might tire of hearing me say this, and yet it's true. And many people don't want to acknowledge this. We are a progressive nation. We are culturally progressive. I was going to try to list off all the institutions and how progressive they get. Here, this might be the most revealing thing. Many churches, many Christian churches are now very progressive. That tells you a lot. Not all, some are not, but many are. Many brag about it. They advertise it on the symbols and the language they use on their little kiosks and billboards and things like that outside, because they know that's going to attract people in their community if they're progressive. I point out that's revealing because you would think they would be first and foremost Christian. That's not always the case. Many Christian churches are now first and foremost progressive, and to the extent they're Christian is a secondary thing. It's in virtually every institution now that we think of as influential, shaping our postmodern world in which we live. Certainly education is thoroughly progressive. It is now lower education, pre-kindergarten, all the way through higher education, up through and including the PhD level. Much of the corporate world, walk into a typical corporate boardroom today, you're going to be surrounded by progressivism. It's in professional sports. It's now the dogmatic orthodoxy in Hollywood. It's certainly in our news media. It's everywhere. And here's what it means to have an orthodoxy. It means large numbers of people believe, or they have faith, or they have a feeling that this is not only true, it's the most important truth. For many people, ordinary people, if they could, they would cram their orthodoxy down the throats of their opponents, preferably backed up with an army and a police force. Now, most people don't have that. And so they don't cram their orthodoxy, right? They have to be polite and respect differences of view. But that's not the way human beings actually think. Human beings don't really love diversity. What they love is what they think is good, their orthodoxy. And they support and they're cheerleaders for those who agree with them. And they tend to hate their enemies. This is a hard lesson to learn, but it's right there throughout human history. So long as there is love, there will be hate. Let me repeat that. As long as there is love, there will be hate. When people love something because they believe it is good, set aside for a moment whether they're correct or not. Whatever they believe is good, whether it actually is good or not, it doesn't matter. If they believe something is good, a cause, an idea, an ideology like progressivism, if they believe it's good, then they're going to view any serious threat to that as an enemy. And they're going to hate their enemy. That's what human beings do. They love their friends and their allies, and they hate their enemy. And it's one of the reasons I highlight so often the great contradictions of our postmodern time in postmodern America. We go around talking about how we're beyond hate. There's, people put little signs out, no hate here in this house, and things like that. This is utterly not true. In fact, just the opposite. Often those people who are out there scolding others, lecturing others about how there should be no hate, those very people are often consumed with hate, brimming with hate. Give them one opportunity and they'll tell you who they hate and why, including people like Charlie Kirk. They hate him. Now, was it one of those people who assassinated Charlie Kirk just a few hours ago? I don't know. I hope we find out soon. I don't know. I do know that he put himself at tremendous risk. And I think he was quite understanding of those risks. Charlie, I knew Charlie, by the way. I met Charlie, my friend Heidi Ganahl. Some of you maybe know her. She ran for governor here in Colorado in 20, I'm getting my years mixed up. I'm getting old now, 2022. But I met her when she ran for, and she was elected to the University of Colorado Board of Regents. Colorado has one of the few public university systems that are governed by elected regents, and Heidi was one. And when she was running, that would have been back in 2016, she invited me to lunch with a young, bright man she had just met named Charlie Kirk. And so we spent an entire afternoon together, Heidi and Charlie and I, and he was very young then. That was, 9 years ago? He's only 31 years old now, on the day of his death. He would have been 22 or 23 years old when I met him. He was a very young guy, and he had these ambitions. He was just starting Turning Point, really thinking about that and what he wanted it to become and all of that. And I'll say this about Charlie. He was an incredible example of the difference between academic achievement and raw intellectual horsepower. Charlie did not have the former, the academic achievement. What he did have was an abundance of raw intellectual horsepower. I think he liked to show that off. And he really on his own had acquired an in-depth understanding of history, the canons of the great books of the Western tradition. And here's what he did. This is what made it so risky, his life. He pushed back against the orthodoxy. He pushed back against progressivism. He was no cheerleader for progressive slogans, for progressive history, for progressive policies. He challenged all of it. He did not, for example, think that a gigantic national centralized welfare state was good or caring. He would point out quite frankly and bluntly and boldly the many failures and the many ways it has hurt people, the ways that progressive policies incentivize all kinds of social pathologies, many of which we see around us today. He was no fan of the tribalism, the identity politics that we see at the heart of progressivism, dividing citizens into different groups and treating different groups differently. The fads that progressives jump onto, like the transsexual fad, he was a critic of it. Rather than standing up and saying, yes, a man demanding to be called a woman, he did not think that was something to be celebrated. He thought that was something to be lamented. I think one of the questions he was being asked as he was murdered today were questions about statistics. People who call themselves transsexuals tend to be a very small minority of the total population. But when you look at the population of people who go on mass random murdering sprees and kill strangers, as many as they can kill, those folks tend to be overly represented in those kinds of pools. And Charlie would point those things out. And by calling out the main tenets of postmodern progressivism, he positioned himself as a critic of the movement that has become our orthodoxy, the religion of progressivism. The church, in many ways, not merely a religion, it's a church. There's a formal organization, there's a hierarchy, there are the equivalents of the priests of progressives. They staff the bureaucracies in Washington, D.C., and that's the orthodoxy. And if you're one of them, if you're out there cheering for the progressive movement today, postmodern progressivism, just realize that's not bold. That's not courageous. You're a cheerleader for the popular orthodoxy. What is rebellious, what requires great courage, is to stand up in a public way and challenge, question, push back against our progressive orthodoxy, which is exactly what Charlie Kirk did. And how much of that was involved with his assassination, we don't know for sure. There's no question that by challenging the orthodox religion of our day, postmodern progressivism, he certainly put himself at great risk. And sadly, for him, for his family, he's paid the ultimate price. Our thoughts go out to him. He has a wife He has two small children, and probably within a heartbeat or two, those little kids became fatherless today because their dad was willing to stand up and ask questions about what has become very popular in the United States today.